scary stories. 2015 through 2017 was a very bad part of my life. My best friend committed suicide in May of 2015. My uncle did the same in September. I was in my senior year, but I was spiraling gradually. I have a history of mental illness dating back to when I was 10, but things just seemed to be getting worse and worse over time. The next year I learned I had to repeat my senior year because I had too many absences. I had weekly therapy appointments, bad mental health days where I couldn't really do anything, and my anxiety had reached a point where I was constantly on the verge of a panic attack. At the start of my senior year, part two of my very close family friends, honestly they were more like aunts to me, died in a house fire. I stayed home from school for a week. Then the same month, my grandpa died. Shortly after my grandpa died, after that, I was officially not functioning as a human being. I got so bad I wasn't going to school at all. I couldn't. I was sleeping nearly 20 hours a day, barely eating, and I wouldn't leave my room unless I had to feed my cat or go to the bathroom. The school eventually told me I wasn't allowed on campus unless I re-enrolled. December 2016, my maternal grandma got me a job as a housekeeper at the old folks' home she worked at. I was there 2 weeks before I had a massive panic attack in an elevator. I was dry heaving, hyperventilating, and I couldn't stop crying. When I recovered, I quit because it was humiliating. I was also living with my sister, our mom, and her husband at the time. They were married October 2016. He was an asshole. It started with him making jokes about burying my sister and I's cats. Then he kept letting my sister's dog out without the leash. And then he kept putting him into the garage in the heat of summer in the Midwest. A few times when the dog got out and we were searching for him, my stepdad complained that it was taking too long. Once it was an early October morning, and he let the dog run outside without the leash, and we were all searching. I was woken up by my mom and put on the first bottoms I could find, which were cut off denim shorts. It was rainy, as I was running up and down every street near our house looking for our dog. Thankfully, my mom found him, and we got in our car to go home. The only thing my stepdad said was I shouldn't have worn shorts so short. There is so much I could tell you about him, all about how he fucked up my mom financially, but the rest of that is irrelevant to this story, is that he is the sole reason we lost our house. After that, we all had to scatter basically. I was living at my dad's house and the rest of them were living with my mom. I thought it would be okay for me to essentially live alone, but I quickly started feeling lonely. One night, I had a panic attack, so bad that I fell into an old coping mechanism where I self-harmed, but it turned worse. This wasn't the first time I attempted, but this was the only time that ended with me in the hospital. I told my mom, who came to get me, and took me to the hospital. They bandaged me up. A few therapists came in to talk to me, and eventually I was sent to inpatient. Everyone in inpatient was really nice. We had snack time twice a day, meals 3 times a day, and there was always a group you could join. I mostly stuck to the art ones. There was a TV with a few couches. Most of us gathered there. For a while we watched the Disney Channel. There was a friend I knew from my brother's friend group in there too, and he kinda kept this guy who was creeping on me. I was wearing a matching pink hoodie and sweatpants, and he kept calling me Pink, always trying to sit with me way too close, and he was very touchy. Anyways, it was Sunday. After dinner, we were all back in the adult wing. When I was bored, I'd walk the halls to pass time. The halls are kinda in a straight line, with the nurses in the middle, and next to them is the main area. You have to walk around the nurses' station to get down to the other hall. There are huge metal doors that close in case of an emergency. I was walking down the opposite hall from my room. As I was passing the main area, I noticed a guy getting really upset and nurses trying to talk to him and calm him down. He kept saying that he missed his family As I got to the hall with my room, the doors closed. We were all told to go to our rooms, but none of us wanted to be alone because we didn't know what was happening. So we all sat on the floor and talked quietly. We could hear him get violent. We had to have been sitting there for at least an hour because the nurses came with the snack cart and let us have some juice, cheese, and yogurt. Another hour passed, and we were told to go to bed, and that our nurses would give us our meds as soon as they can. I went to bed, and in the morning I wasn't in the adult wing at all. I've never seen him again, but I hope to God that he's okay. I am a 15-year-old female. In late January this year, I was committed to an adolescent mental hospital for suicide attempt, something that was stupid on my part, but not crucial to the story, just background information as to why I was there. This was the first time I was ever sent to a facility like this, and having a severe anxiety disorder, I was scared out of my mind. Cue the first run-in with Arthur. I'm replacing everyone's real names, of course. I won't speak too much on his physical appearance, but he was a 17-year-old male. He looked like your typical school shooter. Heavy boots, all black clothing, long hair, etc. No judgment. I was fairly edgy when I was younger. On my first day there, I noticed right away that he would be staring at me all the time. The first thing he said to me was,
"I really like your boots."
I was wearing Doc Martens, which was pretty normal. I really appreciated the compliment, so I opted to start talking to him. A big mistake on my part. We started off simply talking about books and music of which we had similar tastes in, but then Arthur started sitting next to me at every group meeting, every meal, everything. Following me would be a better phrase. His words started getting more concerning as time went on. I saw a number of red flags, but it's not like I could have done anything about it. We were being held in a hospital. I couldn't just leave. I have exact quotes from him because I kept a journal at my time from the hospital. Here are some.
"You seem like you have no corruption. You are an outlier. Everyone here is a degenerate. Know that there is no sociopaths here, right?"
Hinting at himself. But this is just the beginning. Things didn't really heat up until he started giving me poems. Poems with eerie biblical religious references that he would slide under the door of my room. I don't have any of the original poems. The hospital had confiscated them. So I'm going to try to summarize best on my journal entries. There was, of course, the poem where he said I was the Virgin Mary, which, though I find incredibly funny now, was scary at the time. In the poems, he would romanticize me in an angelic way and contrasted himself as a demon. If I remember correctly, the last poem he gave me was concerning. He seemed to be counting down the days until something. He referred to some Catholic day of reckoning that, for the life of me, I can't remember. I'm not a member of that religion, but it was clear that this day of reckoning he kept referring to involved me. I finally reported this to one of the staff members, and they moved me into a different unit. I later found out, after my discharge, that Arthur was schizophrenic. I'm glad I said something when I did, because that probably would have ended very badly for me. Several years ago, I worked at a crisis unit for the acutely mentally ill. It was a 10-bed unit where individuals would come to stay as a step down from a psychiatric hospitalization or a diversion to prevent psychiatric hospitalization. I often worked alone on the weekends. One Friday evening, we received an admission. Michael. Background info was provided with the referral indicating a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder and recent release from prison. After serving a sentence for murder, I completed the initial intake with Michael. during which time he said some sexually explicit things to me. I made it clear that this was inappropriate and that confidentially was limited, and that the staff working on the unit as part of his treatment team would be privy to anything he said in the interview or subsequent one-on-one sessions. He responded well to the redirection. We finished the intake, and I went about the rest of my shift until about 11 p.m. that night, when he approached the office and asked if I was working alone. Luckily, at the time, I wasn't working alone, and I told him that my male co-worker was in the adjoining office. After this encounter, I explained the situation to my co-worker, who read my shift summary and decided to sit down with Michael and tell him the way he was acting was not acceptable, and he could risk being released from the program if it continued. The next morning, I was working alone from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Around 9 a.m., I went to wake up another client, Jeremy, to administer his medications. The room Jeremy was assigned was at the end of the hallway, and he was usually slow to get up in the morning. While I was knocking on Jeremy's door, Michael approached me to tell me he did not appreciate I had shared things he said to me with my male co-worker. I explained to Michael that he knew what he said was inappropriate, and that he knew anything he said to me would be shared with the rest of the treatment team. Michael became agitated and got in my face, backing me into the corner in front of Jeremy's bedroom door. At this point, Jeremy had woken up and heard what was happening outside his room. Jeremy came out of his room, stood between Michael and myself, and told Michael that he needed to walk away and cool down. Michael went back to his room, and I contacted my supervisor, who told me to document the encounter and continue my shift. Needless to say, I left that job shortly after this incident. I am thankful for Jeremy, and that he had the presence of mind, while also being in a clinic with the mental illness, to intervene on my behalf. I often wonder what would have happened if Jeremy wouldn't have woken up, or if he would have been in a more severe state of mental illness and would have become agitated as well. For those of you saying that I couldn't have possibly worked by myself on a 10-bed unit, it was not a secure unit. It was a voluntary unit and was never intended for violent individuals. Michael should have never been there. He needed a higher level of care that we were unable to provide. But in order for us to get funding, we needed more beds to be filled. I was a bachelor's level mental health worker. I administered medications, facilitated psychoeducational groups, and completed one-to-one ratio sessions with clients every shift. I shouldn't have had to work alone, but I did. I don't know if it was legal. I'm assuming it is in my state, but I have no idea. Protocol was to call 911 if things got out of hand, and if they were really bad, to petition them for involuntary hospitalization of the individual. Weekdays, there were 2 staff members and a supervisor present. Evenings, there were sometimes 2 staff members, depending on the day of the week. Overnight, there was 1 staff, and on the weekend, it was me by myself until the cook or cleaning person came for roughly half an hour each. It wasn't an ideal situation, but it is common in residential homes for individuals with intellectual disabilities, some personal care homes, etc. Where I am from. Michael, let's not meet again.